ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। सुमुखश्च एकदन्तश्च कपिलो गजकर्णकः लम्बोदरश्च विकटो विघ्नराजो विनायकः धूमकेतुर्गणाध्यक्षः फालचन्द्रो गजाननः वक्रतुण्डः शूर्पकर्णो हेरम्बः स्कन्दपूर्वजः शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये यस्य द्विरदवक्त्राढ्या पारिषद्भ्या परस्सतं विघ्नं निघ्नन्ति सततं विश्वक्सेनं तमाश्रये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय कृष्णाय अक्लिष्टकारिणे नमो वेदान्तवेद्याय गुरवे बुद्धिसाक्षिणे कृष्णद्वैपायनं व्यासं सर्वभूतहिते रतं वेदाब्जभास्करं वन्दे समाधिनिलयं मुनिं जन्माद्यस्य यतः अन्वयात् यतरतश्च अर्थेषु अभिज्ञः स्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदायः आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजोवारिमृगां यथा विनिमयो यत्र सर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि धर्मः प्रोचितकैतवोऽत्र परमो निर्भत्सराणां तताम् वेद्यं वास्तवम् अत्र वस्तु शिवतं कापत्रयोन्मूलनम् श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृदि अवरुध्यते अत्र कृतिभिः शुश्रूषुभिः तत्क्षणात् निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखात् अमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिकाः भुवि भावुकाः यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतम् अपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरह कातर आजुहाव पुत्रेत्री तन्मयतया तरवोभिदुरस्थं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि यः स्वानुभावम् अखिलश्रुतिसारम् एकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अतितितीर्षतां तमोन्धनां संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यं तं व्याससूनुम् उपयामि गुरुं मुनीनां नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्. Now, with Bhagavan's grace, let us continue from where we left off in our last session. With His grace, now we are partaking a summary review of Skandhams 1, 2 and 3. Then we are in Skandham 1 now. This is not a detailed study of Bhagavatam of the Skandhangal. We have already completed that, but we are doing a refresher, a quick summary refresher. So by very fact that who can edit and really summarize Vyasa Bhagavan's teaching, who is qualified to do that? I am certainly not. Every slokam in Bhagavatam is nothing but nectar, nothing but Amritam itself. So which one do you take up, which one do you leave, So lots of things will be left out in our summary. But whatever Bhagavan guides me to share with you as part of the summary review, that is what I am doing right now, because He decides what to be shared in summary. Now, today we will start with, we saw in our last session, the Pancha Pandava and Draupadi, they took the most stringent vow called Mahaprasthanam and went all the way, traveling north without stopping, without eating anything, absolutely no stop. Okay, nothing to eat, nothing to drink water, nothing. Body keeps on walking till it falls down where at the place and time that it is destined to. And we also saw last time, very quickly refreshing the last part, the Swarga Rohini is a pathway, but pathway is probably not the right one, is the margam, the route that was taken by Panchapandavas. It is north of today's Badrinath and the Mana village, which is 3 kilometers north of Badrinath. And from there, when you go, the pathway takes you in what is known as Swargarohini, the pathway that Pandavas took. So even today it is available. Those of us who are physically fit can definitely travel that and relive those moments. But now, after the Pandavas, before they left, they coronated Parikshit, who was a young boy. You saw that. So after the Pandavas left the kingdom, today we will partake the reign of Emperor Parikshit, which to me is the best example that one can get how to rule a country, how to rule a group of people, how to be a manager, how to be a king, right? These are all not theories, but a true thing that he conducted in practice and showed us even today how a country should be ruled, how a kingdom should be ruled. If only we were to emulate the things that he did, we will have absolutely nothing but joy and peaceful life. It's amazing the way he did. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. It is so important. Even this was taking place even as Kali was stepping in. Dwapara was ending, Kali was coming in. That's a transition period. Okay. Now, from the throne of the imperial Bharata, Parikshit held this dominion adhering to the principle of justice and morality, lovingly fostering his subjects and guarding them from harm with parental care and affection. This is the mantra. To care for your people, the people working for you in your group, in your organization, or if you're a king or an administrator, whatever it may be, care for the people, foster them lovingly, and guard them from harm with a parental care and affection. Very important. Then whatever may be the task he set his hands upon, Parikshit did not move one step without calling to mind Krishna and his grandfathers, the Pandavas, and praying to them to crown him with success. Parikshit, remember, even in fetus, he had Bhagavan Darshan. So his mind was always involved only in Krishna, and that's how he led his life all throughout. So he was always thinking of Krishna only. He prayed to them, Krishna and his Pandavas, morning and evening to direct him along the correct path, or correct path of virtue. And he felt as if he was the heart of his people and as if they were his body. That is how he ruled the kingdom. Throughout his empire, the very wind was reluctant to displace any article for fear of being implicated in theft. That is how strict and how beautiful it was. There was not the slightest fear of thieves, nor was there any trace of injustice, immorality, or ill will. The kingdom gained great fame. At the slightest sign of any such evil, Parikshit overcame it by means of terrific punishment and instituted preventive steps, which decidedly scotched them from ever appearing again. Since Dharma was thus fostered with love and reverence, even nature was kind. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha, not an ordinary axiom that we repeat. Parikshit was following that, practicing it. Rains came in time, crops grew high and rich, granaries were filled, people were contented, happy, and unafraid. When Parikshit was on the throne, ruling over the empire with great care, the ministers and the spiritual masters who were the guides of the dynasty conferred among themselves and resolved that they must approach the king with a proposal that he should enter the grahastha, the householder stage, by taking on a partner in marriage. So they get married to an auspicious time, or to the daughter of the Virata royal family. Actually, the and this is his uncle, maternal uncle Uttara, his daughter. Her name was Airavati. And Queen Airavati was a great Sadhvimani, gem among virtuous men, virtuous women. So, during the reign of this king and this queen, men and women lived in peace and happiness. They were untroubled by want. Parikshit too arranged for the performance of many Vedic sacrifices and rituals. Could you please press star and 6 to make sure that you're muted at your end? Thank you. So then Parikshit arranged the worship in temples and homes of God in its manifold forms, various forms, no differentiation which form it was. Okay, and by these and other means, faith in God and love of man were implanted in the hearts of his subjects. Very important. Faith in Bhagavan and love of human being. Beautiful. He promoted measures to ensure peace and harmony among the sages and saints who were living as recluses in forest ashrams. He guarded them in their silent retreats from man and beast. He exhorted them to probe into themselves and discover the laws of self-control. He supervised personally the steps taken to ensure their safety and security. Thus, Parikshit and Airavati ruled over their empire like Ishvara and Parvati, who rule over the universe with parental love and care. Shortly, the queen was in the family way, and in due time, she delivered a son. Janame Jayan was the name, and so we'll skip that part. Parikshit was the overlord of the kings of the earth because he had the blessings of the great, the counsel of the wise, and the grace of Bhagavan. After his long campaign of conquest, he encamped on the banks of Ganga and celebrated as a mark of his victory 3 Aswamedha Yagangas. His fame spread not only over the length and breadth of India, but even far beyond its borders. He was acclaimed by every tongue as a great jewel of the Bharata royal family. There was no state that had not bent under his yoke. There was no ruler who set his command at naught. He had no need to march at the head of his army to subdue any people or ruler, because all of them were only too willing to pay him homage. He was a master of all lands and all people. Now, the spirit of wickedness and vice known as Kali had already come in with the end of the Krishna era. So it was raising its poisonous hood off and on, but Parikshit was vigilant. He adopted measures to counterfoil its stratagems and machinations. He sought to discover the footprints of his grandfathers throughout this realm, in the reforms they introduced, the institutions they established. He reminded his people, whenever occasion arose, of their nobility and aspiration. He told them of Krishna, his grace and mercy. He shed tears of joy and gratitude whenever he related to them this story. He was sincerely pining for the chance he had lost to have Pandavas and Krishna by his side. Now he knew that Kali had entered his kingdom and was endeavoring to fix its hold on the minds of men. When he became cognizant of its activities, he investigated into the conditions favorable for its spread, and with the active cooperation of his teachers and elders, he enacted special laws to counteract the tendencies that Kali aroused. When the elders advised him that such precautions need be taken only when wickedness emerges as crime, Parikshit did not support that opinion. He was for alertness. He wanted to give the lead to his people, Tatha Raja, Tatha Praja. He declared that Kali or wickedness can have sway only through the incompetence of the ruler, the loss of self-reliance among the people, the decline in the earning of grace, Bhagavan's grace. These are the three reasons Kali can come. These three are the factors that promote the plans of Kali. The incompetence of the ruler, the loss of self-reliance among the people, and the decline in the earning of grace, not decline in grace, decline in the earning of grace. These three are the factors that promote the plans of Kali. Without them, man cannot fall prey to its wiles and stratagems. Aware of this, Parikshit went around his kingdom and sought day and night to drive Kali out of his horns. That is to say, he attempted to give no room to injustice, to force, to evil character, to untruth, and to violence. His preventive plans were effective. He had so much quiet in his kingdom that he campaigned in various regions outside the Bharata region. Bhadrasva, Ketumala, Uttarakura, Kimpurusha regions. He did that. Now, I want to share with you a very important slokam from Bhagavatam. It is Skandam 1, Adhyayam 17, 38 and 39. Very important thing that you all relate to. 38 and 39 in Adhyayam 17. Now, before that, since Parikshit was tightly controlling the emergence of Kali, and if you read the previous slokan, it says he was about to eradicate Kali completely. But why did he not do that? Because that's what the answer is given here. Because he was about to eradicate, and basically Kali would have been gone. Because his kingdom was conducted in such a dharmic manner, completely dharmic manner, and people are also following dharma. So how can Kali come? So he was about to eradicate it, but Kali made a prayer to him. And he said, he was going to drive it away. He said, Swami, wherever I go in this kingdom, even if I go outside the kingdom, I see your picture there. I see your form, ready to eradicate me, ready to kill me. So please, allot me a place to stay, it said. Please give me a place to stay. So I will just keep there, mind my business, because I know at any time you can kill me and take me out. So where can I stay, please? Then, in Slokam 38 and 39, then Parikshit allowed, he thought about it, then he allowed for Kali to stay in 5 places. Okay, it began like that. So it's such a beautiful slogan that I want to share these two with you. So if you look at one second, I think. Okay, yeah. Now, I hear. Okay. Now I hear some background noise, so if you can kindly press star and 6 on your phone, star and 6, that will mute at your end. Thank you. So in Slokam 38, for example, we gave permission to stay in 5 places. One was drinking, gambling, drinking, illicit association with women, and animal slaughter. These are the 4 places he first gave. So Slokam 38. Abhi artitaha tada tasmai sthanani kalaye dadahu dhyutam panam striyaha suna yatra adharmaha chatur vidaha. The adharmam is in dhyutam. Dhyutam means gambling. Panam is drinking liquor, intoxication. Striyaha, illicit association with women. Suna, is animal slaughter, killing animals. These 4 places, he said, you can stay. So any of these 4 that is done, that is adharmic. That is how Kali manifests. But Kali was not satisfied, so he made another prayer, and he said, no, Swami, please give me one more. And here lies the Slokam 39. You can relate it to your life and the life of people around you, and you'll see how true it is. Then, out of his infinite compassion, Parikshit allowed him one more place for Kali to stay, and that is wealth, money. Because in Slokam 39, it says, Punascha yachamanaya jatarupam agatu pramuhu tataha anrutam madam kamam rajo vairam cha panchamam. He allowed him, yachamanaya, one who was praying, very pleading, please give me one more place. Kali was praying. Prabhu, the Parikshit, Jatarubam Adate. Jataruma means money, like what we call as gold. Okay? And here I'm deliberately using the word money. It's because wealth is much more than money. Everything in nature is wealth. Okay? But we're talking of monetary aspect of this wealth, which is gold. So he allowed Kali to reside in this money also, gold also. Why? Because the moment you attach yourself to money, what happens? Anrutam, lies, untruth, so many things happen. Madam, pride, and the dambam, the garvam, and one second, I want to get this slokam here. Oh, for some reason I'm not getting this. Hold on. 39, okay. Okay, there you go. I got the slokam now. Good. Thank you. So, we got Anrutam. Anrutam means the moment you attach yourself to money, what are you doing? You are embracing Kali. And there are 5 qualities that arise out of your attachment to money. Number 1, Anrutam. Anrutam means life, untruth, opposite of Satyam. Second is Madam. Madam is intoxication, the pride. Intoxication not out of liquor, but I've got so much money. That pride comes in, that Madam comes in, right? And very difficult to be humble, very difficult to have humility when you have lots of money. It's a huge trap, right? When you're attached to money. Please remember this is exactly what we are doing, feeling in our world today. The third one is Kamam. Lust comes in. Things go out of control. Kamam not only for the opposite sex, but also for everything in the world. I can acquire anything I want. I don't care what means I employ. Right? Nobody can catch me. I'm powerful. So many things come in. Then the other thing is Rajaha. Rajaha means jealousy, not jealousy, but envy. If you have lots of money, then you are jealous of somebody who's got more money than you. It always happens. This is Rajaha. And then comes Vairam, enmity. Even your own brothers and sisters, your own parents, your own children, your own friends, everybody all of a sudden mentally becomes your enemy because you're not sure. Are they after my money? How can I protect it from them? So these 5 tendencies arise out of your attachment to money because Parikshit allowed Kali to stay in gold, in money. In addition to the other 4, which is Jutam, gambling, Panam, liquor, intoxication, Striyaha, illicit association with women, and Suna is killing animals. Okay? So non-vegetarian food, for example. Along with that, the attachment to gold, to money, is where Kali is living today. You can go and analyze it, you will see the truth of this statement. So that is what he did. Then let us move on. We have 4 minutes. Throughout his life, after vanquishing but allowing Kali to stay in these places, Parikshit continued to rule. Now, in his kingdom, everything, every waking moment, everything he did was always, always, always in the company of Krishna in his mind. Please, it is not like he was given moksham. The amazing tapas he did, amazing tapas, even before he was born. So this Manmana Bhava, Matbhakto, that Manmana Bhava is so important. Krishna is always, always thinking only of Krishna, Krishna conscious. Amazing life he led, and such a bhakta he was. So he was blessed, he was rewarded. One day Vyasa Bhagavan visited him. All of a sudden Parikshit was very happy. So he welcomed him, and the evening came and Vyasa Bhagavan said, okay, son, I've got to leave now, go take leave. Parikshit prayed to him, Swami, what is this? You come just now. I'm so happy and honored, and such a sweet thing. How can you go without narrating to me the stories of Krishna? I've never seen him. Yes, I saw him when I was 10 days old and all that, but people tell me this is what I did. I crawled up to him and looked up to him, and he said, yes, Parikshit was my name, etc. But I was too young. I don't remember any of this. Please, you have to tell me his story, the sweetness, the glories, and so many things, and also tell me about my grandparents, because I have not spent time with them, the Panchapandavas. So beautifully, Vyasa narrated to him several incidences, including the palace that was set in fire, and then how the Swayamvaram, how Arjuna shot the arrow and won the hands of Draupadi, and the very first time that Krishna and Arjuna met, and he was going through each of those stories so beautifully, and he described what a great friendship Arjuna and Krishna had. He gave several instances. Then he also said about the Kandava Vanam, the Kandava forest, how that forest was destroyed, and how Takshaka escaped from it. All the stories he narrated in great detail throughout the evening. When the night went, Parikshit did not. Then he narrated the Durvasa episode, when Durvasa visited them, and how Arjuna went for tapas in the Himalayan mountains, fought with none other than Shiva himself, and how he got the Pasupatastram. All those things he narrated, and then finally he also narrated the how Bhagavan was a Parthasarathi, what did he do in that Kurukshetra war, right? What his presence did, and how he tended to the horses, how his soft hands were completely every evening was streaming with blood of holding the reins of the horses so tightly. And after everybody went to sleep, how he took the horses to the pond and applied ointments, balm on their skins, so that, because they were also being hit by arrows, and how he bathed them and took care of them, how he even forgot his own sleep, how fantastic service he provided. I mean, so many things he described in detail. I mean, it's not fair to glide through all this in such a one-liner way, because each one is a nectarine company of Bhagavan. If you listen to it, you will be with Bhagavan only. So all this happened, and then the morning, the dawn came, and they could hear the chirpings of the birds, and immediately Vyasa Bhagavan said, "Oh, son, the whole night is gone. So now I must go and tend to my rituals and my daily activities." So he took leave and went. Then Parikshit went out, because he was so engrossed only in the thoughts of Krishna and all the Leela that Krishna played, everything Vyasa Bhagavan had narrated to him. Just imagine how you will be if Vyasa Bhagavan himself comes and narrates those to you. You will be only reveling in that in your mind. So he left his palace and went hunting not to kill animals, so to speak, because he was reveling in the company of Krishna, all the various things that he did. He was ruminating on that, reflecting on that, went into the forest, and very soon he got separated from his retinue. He was not even paying attention to the people who followed him. And then he lost his way. Then it so happened he not only lost his way, that he became very thirsty and he was very tired, and he trekked a long distance. Let me take a few more minutes and then I want to complete this part, okay, with Bhagavan's grace. So here he was. Maybe it was noon time, maybe it was a little bit afternoon, the whole day, whatever it is. He had not eaten anything, he had not drunk anything, he's been moving around in the forest. How tired he will be naturally. So he trekked a long distance and could not find any beast at all. Fierce thirst began tormenting him. He was exhausted beyond endurance. Frantically, he searched for water. Then, luckily, he saw an ashram, a hermitage, a cottage that is thatched with grass. So very eagerly and highly expecting, he hurried towards it. But there was no one to be seen, not a single soul. It appeared empty. He called out very distressingly and as loudly as he could manage. Remember, he was also very tired, so he could not shout too much. But he had a very feeble voice. The very feeble voice, he shouted, "Thirst, thirst." And like, I'm thirsty, in a very pleading manner. In a very, very pleading manner. He was saying, I'm thirsty. So somebody help me, kind of a thing. There was no reply from the ashram, from the cottage. Then he entered the cottage. There he saw a sage, a rishi, was completely immersed in dhyanam. He went near him and he addressed him pathetically. He said, "Sir, sir." But the rishi was so lost in the depths of meditation that there was no response at all. Now, the king was overcome by resentment and a fierce gust of anger. Having come to the hermitage and seen the hermit, he was still helpless with hunger and thirst. This wounded his pride because he was a ruler of the realm, and the hermit had dared to dwell within himself when he had come before him and called out for him. He became blind to the rules of propriety, and he could hardly control his anger. Now, his feet trod on some rope on the floor. He discovered it was a dead snake. That put a wicked thought, idea into his head. And it's almost like, very quietly it happened, almost like by a twist of fate it happened. He threw it around the neck of the hermit, who was sitting like a statue, and the hermit was absolutely unaware of others' problems. And then he put the dead snake around the snake, and then he left the hermitage and walked away fast to seek some other place to slake his thirst and get some food. At that point, we will stop today with Bhagavan's grace and continue tomorrow. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.